Picture Everest torn from the earth and turned upside down, its peak driven into the sea. Now watch it vanish. 2 kilometers of black water would still separate its summit from the ocean floor. This is not exaggeration. This is simple, unforgiving arithmetic. Now picture every city you have ever walked through, every forest whose canopy seemed endless as you wandered beneath it, every mountain path, every valley view, every country whose scale once felt immense to you. Gather them all together, and they would not fill a single corner of what lies beneath the waves. More than 95% of this planet's water exists in absolute darkness, in a realm no sunlight has ever touched. By volume, it is the largest habitat on Earth, and most of us will spend our entire lives without giving it a single thought. But it is not empty. It has never been empty. Down here, weight presses from every side, a pressure that would crush the machinery we build to survive it. And yet, within that crushing dark, there is sound. Sperm whales produce the loudest biological noise on the planet, a booming click that pulses through the black. Sound itself moves differently down here, over 4 times faster than it does in air, because water's dense, tightly packed molecules carry vibration further and truer than the open sky ever could. This is a cathedral without light. Its nave is darkness. Its stone is water. Its choir is every living thing that has ever called it home. We are about to descend into that choir, down past the reach of the sun, down to a silence that has been undisturbed for longer than human memory. And in that silence, something has been waiting. We begin, as these stories rarely do, not at the surface, but at the very bottom. At the furthest depths of the ocean lies the abyssal plain, a seabed so vast it stretches across more than half of Earth's surface, buried beneath 3,000 to 6,000 meters of black water. It is one of the flattest landscapes our planet possesses, its gentle slopes shifting by no more than a meter or 2 across entire kilometers. No sunlight has ever reached it. The pressure here would flatten a car. And still, in this seeming emptiness, something extraordinary accumulates. It falls slowly without ceasing, a fine and constant drift from the world above. The dust of continents, the shells of plankton, the fragments of everything that has ever died in the sunlit water overhead. Scientists call it marine snow. It settles at roughly 1 millimeter per 1,000 years. Left alone for long enough, it builds into something staggering. In the oldest basins, over 1.5 kilometers of silt lies pressed into the seafloor, each fragile layer a page in the ocean's own book of time. It is no surprise, then, that an entire community has given up the ability to swim, choosing instead to make a life within this ancient sediment. Sea cucumbers glide across the mud like slow, living machines, swallowing sediment whole and sifting it for nourishment before releasing it, cleansed, back into the world. In places, they make up the overwhelming majority of visible life on the plain, an unseen engine quietly keeping the deep alive. Beside them prowl giant isopods, cousins of the humble woodlouse, grown here to nearly 0.5 meters in length, part of a cleanup crew that ensures nothing in this world is ever wasted. But sometimes this silent mud receives more than dust. Sometimes it receives something that fell from a very different world entirely. A tree once rooted on some distant shore, an old wooden ship lost to a storm, carried by rivers and currents, it eventually sinks and becomes what scientists call a woodfall. Wood is no easy meal. It is built from lignocellulose, tough fibers locked within a matrix that resists decay. Yet colonies of wood-boring clams, aided by microbial partners supplying powerful enzymes, make quick work of it, converting carbon grown thousands of meters above on land into living biomass on the ocean floor. Over months and years, a careful succession unfolds. Early colonists give way to bivalves, then finally to specialist invertebrates, until every fiber is exhausted. A tree from a shore no one down here has ever seen becomes briefly an island of energy. This hunger is capable of consuming an entire wooden ship in under 100 years, leaving behind only what could never be digested: twisted metal sunk in silence. There is one extraordinary exception. In March of 2022, the wreck of Ernest Shackleton's ship Endurance was discovered 10,000 feet below the Antarctic seas. Its wood entirely intact. 107 years after it was lost in 1915, it appears suspended in time, untouched because the Southern Ocean holds no fauna capable of digesting wood. Antarctica has no trees, and so no evolutionary pressure ever demanded the skill. The animals that could break down timber elsewhere on Earth have never been able to cross the sharp temperature barrier of the Antarctic polar front. And yet Endurance is far from lifeless. Sea lilies unfurl hair-like arms from her decks. Sea squirts cycle water through their bodies in search of drifting particles. A single Brisingid sea star waves its arms from what was once the ship's helm. Filter feeders using a century-old wreck simply as a surface to cling to. A ghost ship alive with quiet visitors. Wood is not the only feast the deep sea receives from above. Greater still, and open to far more mouths than the few that can digest timber, is the arrival of a whale fall. When a great whale dies, its body begins a slow, silent collapse through the water column, sometimes taking days to complete its final descent. When it finally strikes the seabed, the feeding begins almost immediately. Sharks, isopods, and hagfish tear into the flesh first, stripping the carcass down with startling speed. What remains, bone, cartilage, the skeleton's quiet architecture, becomes host to an entirely new wave of life. Sulfur-loving microbes colonize the bones themselves, and in their wake come worms, mollusks, and crustaceans. Feeding on chemical energy the whale's body continues to release long after death. A single carcass can sustain this cascading ecosystem for decades, in some cases, centuries. An entire island of life born from a single loss, slowly flaking away until, at last, it rejoins the silt from which everything else on the plain is made. The animals that depend on these rare windfalls have adapted to a punishing rhythm. In famine, many can endure for years without a single meal. In feast, they gorge until they can barely move. They are survivors shaped entirely by scarcity, holding a patient vigil across a plain that offers almost nothing, and then, without warning, everything. But not every visitor to this seafloor arrives already dead. From the darkness above the plain, drawn by scent, by movement, by the promise of a meal already underway, other shapes begin to descend. Bodies built for speed, for stealth, for depths few living things have ever charted. They come from the open water, and they do not come to stay. Enormous six-gill sharks descend from the darkness above, drawn by the scent of carrion or the telltale movement of scavengers already at work. Heavy-bodied and ancient in design, they can stretch longer than 4 meters, some reaching 6, the length of a minibus, a design so effective it has barely changed in millions of years. Alongside them glide the chimeras, sometimes called ghost sharks. Not true sharks at all, but ancient cousins whose lineage split off more than 400 million years ago, long before dinosaurs ever walked the earth. Their bodies taper into whip-like tails, their wing-like fins carrying them low over the seafloor in something close to slow flight. They do not strike suddenly. They press their mouths directly into the mud, crushing crabs and clams with hard, grinding tooth plates, guided by sensitive patches of skin that detect the faint electrical signals of buried prey. And then, something unspools from the darkness entirely, fins broad as sails, arms falling in long, fine threads that trail like fishing line over stone. This is the bigfin squid, Magnapina, one of the rarest animals ever documented, with fewer than 24 confirmed encounters in recorded history. Some individuals stretch beyond 6 meters, 8 arms and 2 tentacles held at sharp right angles beneath the body, filaments dropping like lines into the current below. No one fully knows what those filaments are for. Scientists suspect the bigfin may be a passive hunter, simply holding its arms outstretched and waiting for the current to deliver a meal directly into them. NOAA has filmed bigfins drifting between 2 and 2,500 meters down, with confirmed sightings as deep as 4,735 meters. Most recently, a juvenile was recorded in the Philippine Trench at over 6,000 meters, the deepest squid ever observed, a visitor from depths almost no human eye has ever reached. To the creatures anchored to the plain below, these wanderers must seem like migrating birds, strange, fleeting, and gone as quickly as they came. Follow the abyssal plain far enough, past where the silt runs thin and the bare rock lies exposed, and you reach the very seams of the earth, places where the crust itself is being pulled apart. Here, seawater seeps into the cracks and is superheated to extraordinary temperatures, often exceeding 400 degrees Celsius, before rushing back out into the ocean. It carries with it minerals stolen from deep within the rock, and as the scalding water meets the cold sea, those minerals crystallize instantly, building towering chimneys of stone and metal. Some vent dark, billowing clouds rich in sulfides, black smokers, rising from fields that can stretch hundreds of meters across. Their true marvel isn't the mineral towers, it's what gathers around them. A living fuzz coats the surrounding rock, vast colonies of microbes that need no sunlight whatsoever, drawing their energy instead from hydrogen sulfide and methane through a process called chemosynthesis. It is the foundation of an entire ecosystem, powered not by the sun above, but by fire and stone below. Nowhere is this more astonishing than in the giant tube worms, Riftia pachyptila. Rooted in the vents, sheathed in white tubes that grow up to 3 meters tall, they possess neither mouth nor gut. Instead, an internal organ called the trophosome houses billions of bacteria, which feast on the vent's sulfides and feed their host in return. The worm cannot live without them. Nearby, the Pompeii worm survives water temperatures soaring past 80 degrees Celsius, insulated and nourished by a fleece of bacteria living directly on its back. Even reproduction bends to this strange heat. At Dorado Outcrop off Costa Rica, hundreds of deep-sea octopuses gather in crevices warmed by hydrothermal seepage, brooding their eggs for up to 4 years without ever leaving to feed, the longest incubation period known anywhere in the animal kingdom. Here, life has rewritten every rule we thought was universal. But not all of the ocean offers a place to anchor. Far above the vents, far beyond the seamounts, lies open water with no rock to cling to, no silt to burrow into, nothing but endless blue fading into black. For the creatures that live here, survival becomes a game of concealment, and there are only 3 real strategies. Some choose to be seen but not as they truly are, like squid that mimic the shape of a stinging, nutrient-poor jelly, hoping to be mistaken for something not worth eating. Some choose to be seen only partially, luring prey close with a single glowing lure, as the anglerfish famously does, and most choose not to be seen at all. a strategy so popular that everywhere you look in this open water, some new variation on invisibility has evolved. Silver skin to scatter light, deep red bodies that vanish entirely, since red wavelengths disappear at shallow depths. Dark backs paired with pale bellies, erasing any hint of silhouette, or in the ocean's rarest gift, true transparency, a luxury made possible only because there is no damaging sunlight down here to punish a body without pigment. Drifting through this void is the telescope octopus, nearly colorless, its 8 arms trailing behind a body built almost entirely of clear jelly. It is one of the very few truly pelagic octopus species. Its strange tubular eyes protruding like tiny periscopes, gathering the faintest scatter of bioluminescent light from every direction at once. And where there is no shelter at all, some creatures simply become the shelter. Jellyfish, bodies built from 98% water, run not on a brain but on a diffuse web of nerves sensing touch, chemistry, and light. Beneath their drifting bells, smaller creatures find refuge, sheltering in a body with no memory, no thought, only instinct, older than most of life on Earth. We think of the ocean as flat, as blue, as something we cross to get somewhere else, a surface, a border, a backdrop for weather rolling in from the west. But this is its greatest illusion. The ocean does not begin at the shore and it does not end at the horizon. It begins in the clouds, in the rain, in every river that runs, however quietly, down to meet it. It begins wherever salt is carried and wherever a tide is felt pulling at the edge of the land. And beneath all of that lies everything we have just witnessed. Planes built from 1.5 kilometers of falling time, ships preserved for a century by nothing but isolation. Entire ecosystems born from a single death, and creatures that have abandoned mouths, brains, even color itself, simply to survive in a world with no sun. We began this journey with a single staggering fact that Mount Everest, turned upside down and driven into the sea, would still fall short of the deepest trench by 2 full kilometers. It was meant to unsettle you, to remind you how little of this planet we actually know, how much of it exists entirely without us, indifferent to our cities, our mountains, our sense of scale. But scale was never really the point. Life was, in every corner of that darkness, in the silt, in the fire, in the endless drifting blue. Something is alive. Something is surviving, adapting, thriving in conditions that should, by every measure we understand, be impossible. The ocean is not an expanse to be crossed. It is an interior, a hollow at the very heart of the world, holding more life, more mystery, and more quiet wonder than any of us will ever fully comprehend. It is not empty. It never was. It is home.